What happens when the script changes at the last minute? Carlos Alcaraz had everything ready for a high-level debut at Roland Garros 2025 against Kei Nishikori, a veteran with vast experience. But an unexpected injury to the Japanese player has forced the story to be rewritten. Along with the opponent. Now, the Spaniard will face Giulio Zeppieri, a young Italian coming from the qualifiers, who, on paper, presents a much smaller challenge. Is it really a favorable change? Can Alcaraz afford to be overconfident, or could this unexpected twist backfire? Stay tuned, because this is just getting started. Carlos Alcaraz arrived in Paris riding the momentum of having won the Rome Masters 1000 and with the goal of defending his Roland Garros title. His debut was scheduled for this Monday against Kei Nishikori, a player known for his quality, history on the tour, and experience. Even though he wasn't at his best, the Japanese star was undoubtedly one of the most dangerous names in the draw. The problem is that Nishikori's health issues struck again. A new injury forced him to withdraw before even stepping on the court. Thus, a matchup that promised experience and intensity vanished from the calendar. And with it, a new story began for the Spaniard, facing Italian Giulio Zeppieri. Zeppieri, only 23 years old and currently ranked number 306 in the world, reached the main draw after winning 3 qualifying matches without dropping a set. In his last match, he defeated Argentine Agustin Gomez, who had eliminated young Spanish prospect Martín Landaluz. The Italian is on a roll, motivated, and with nothing to lose. Despite his youth and low ranking, Zeppieri is not a rival to be underestimated. He has shown consistency and mental strength during the qualifiers, key attributes in a long tournament like Roland Garros. His playing style adapts well to clay, and although he lacks experience on big stages, he will have nothing to lose against the world number 2. For Alcaraz, the change represents a relief in terms of competitive pressure. Nishikori, with his experience and ability to endure long rallies, would have been a tough start. In contrast, Zeppieri presents a different scenario, a younger opponent with less tour mileage but still dangerous if underestimated. Such situations also demand quick mental adjustments. Changing opponents, styles, and tactical plans is not as easy as it sounds. But if anyone has proven capable of reacting well, it's Carlitos. His coaching team, led by Juan Carlos Ferrero, is already tweaking the game plan to ensure a solid debut. Meanwhile, the qualifiers have set up some very interesting matchups. Albert Ramos, in his final Roland Garros, will face the always dangerous Casper Ruud. Pablo Lamas will play a Spanish duel against Alejandro Davidovich, while veteran Marin Cilic has entered as a lucky loser and will face Kobali. Lloyd Harris, on the other hand, will take on the powerful Andrei Rublev. Carlos Alcaraz's path at Roland Garros begins with a surprise. What was supposed to be an opener against a legend like Kei Nishikori has turned into a match against a young Italian hopeful who will play without fear. Though on paper it looks like an easier debut, the key will be how Alcaraz handles this unexpected change. Focus, adaptability, and respect for his opponent will be crucial to avoid upsets. Can you be the world number 2 and still feel the need to explain yourself? Carlos Alcaraz has proven to be one of the most talented and charismatic tennis players of his generation, but he's also faced criticism following the release of his Netflix documentary. Why? For wanting to live like a 22-year-old without giving up elite tennis. And now, from Roland Garros, where he defends his title, Alcaraz has decided to speak out. What does Carlitos really think about pressure, his career, and the criticism? Stay with us to discover the human side of the champion. Carlos Alcaraz is already in Paris. With the Rome title under his belt and the fresh memory of his 2024 Roland Garros victory, the Spaniard is ready for battle. But before stepping onto the Philippe Chatrier court, he gave an interview to the tournament's official magazine to talk about his current mindset. And also to defend himself. Because after the release of his Netflix documentary, many accused him of not taking tennis seriously enough. Carlos's response was firm: "I've worked incredibly hard to get here. Talent is necessary, but without hard work, it's useless. For years I sacrificed a lot when I was younger to achieve my goal." Words that reflect undeniable maturity and dismantle the myth of a young man living between parties and cameras. Alcaraz insists that if he's where he is today, it's due to discipline, effort, and the support of a team that's always stood by him, especially during tough times. In the interview, he also spoke of his deep affection for Roland Garros, a tournament that has given him his greatest glory and has been present in his life since childhood. "When I was a kid, I'd rush home to watch the matches on TV. I dreamed of playing there. I remember telling myself, one day, I'll be on that court. That dream is now a reality." And although he admits clay is not his favorite surface, He grew up on it and has a special connection with claycourt tournaments. Of course, the name Rafael Nadal came up. For Carlos, the Mallorcan is not only an idol but also a constant source of learning. Rafa is an exceptional person, very humble. I learned a lot from how he approaches matches, the passion with which he plays each point, and how he manages emotions in key moments. Words of admiration that show the new generation doesn't want to break from the legacy, they want to proudly continue it. Finally, Carlos also spoke about his coach, Juan Carlos Ferrero, Roland Garros champion in 2003. He was really strong. He moved very well. Sometimes I dream of playing like him. I think he was more complete than I am today. Another sign of the respect Carlitos has for the history of Spanish tennis. And that, even at the top, he remains humble. Carlos Alcaraz arrives at Roland Garros carrying a heavy load of pressure, expectations, and criticism, but also with titles, confidence, and a past that justifies his present. Behind the champion is a young man who has sacrificed a lot, who continues to learn, and who understands that greatness isn't only measured in trophies, but in the ability to inspire and stay true to oneself. Far from what some think, Carlos isn't improvising his career, he's building it with every shot, every lesson, and every word. What happens when your idol becomes your doubles partner? Carlos Alcaraz, current world number 2 and defending Roland Garros champion, shared a very special memory, his experience alongside Rafael Nadal at the Paris Olympic Games. Beyond wins, finals, and titles, what he experienced with Rafa has become one of the biggest lessons of his young yet impressive career. What exactly did he learn from Nadal? And why could this experience shape his future as a tennis player? Let's dive in, because this is much more than just a story. Carlos Alcaraz heads to Roland Garros with a tailwind. With titles in Monte Carlo and Rome, a final in Barcelona, and the motivation of defending his crown in Paris, the Spaniard is at the center of all attention. But amid this whirlwind of victories, he paused to speak about something even more valuable than any trophy: learning. In an interview with the Parisian tournament, Alcaraz recalled an experience that has defined much of his development as a player, his doubles partnership with Rafael Nadal during the Olympic Games. For him, that moment was more than just sharing a court. It was an exceptional experience to be close to my idol, he said. What he learned alongside Nadal goes beyond technique. It's something, he says, that he'll carry throughout his career. When speaking of Rafa, Carlos is full of praise. I admire his way of playing, of being on court, his mindset, and his love for tennis. But what struck him most was Nadal's demeanor off the court. Rafa is an exceptional person, very humble. When you meet him for the first time, he's just like you or me. A simple phrase, but one that shows the impact of sharing a locker room and camp with the living legend of Spanish tennis. The most valuable takeaway, however, was watching Nadal in action. According to Alcaraz, the biggest lesson was how Nadal handles pressure and mentally prepares for matches. I learned how he managed pressure situations, how he approached matches, and saw the passion he exudes. Because when you play with Nadal, you don't just share a court. You share a mentality, a way of understanding the sport that has been key to winning 22 Grand Slams. In that sense, Carlitos believes the experience with Rafa at the Olympics will be extremely useful throughout his career. And rightly so. Learning from the greatest claycourt player ever, and doing so in a setting like the Olympics, is unforgettable. It leaves a mark. It's learning in its purest form. Alcaraz has proven that he can write his own story, but also that he respects the ones written before him. And on that list, Nadal holds the highest place for him. Not just as a reference in the rankings, but as a role model for behavior, humility, and love for tennis. Rafael Nadal has spoken. Just days before receiving a well-deserved tribute at Roland Garros, the Spanish champion gave an emotional and sincere interview to the newspaper L'Equipe. He reflected on his career, his retirement, the current state of tennis, and especially the figure of Carlos Alcaraz and the recent controversy over his documentary. What does Rafa think about the young Mercian? What does he say about Sinner? Does he miss the tour? Today, we analyze the key points from one of the greatest players of all time. Rafa Nadal starts by talking about his new life outside the professional circuit. I'm happy not to be in pain, he confesses. Although he admits that some nights he gets less sleep because of his son, he also makes it clear that he doesn't miss the court. Retirement was not an easy decision, but it was a natural one. His body simply said enough. The foot, operated on and damaged since 2005, ultimately dictated everything. I couldn't run freely, and without that, competing made no sense, he explains. His words carry calm and satisfaction. Nadal doesn't seem to have unfinished business with tennis. I'm at peace. I know I did everything I could to keep going, he says, making it clear that his retirement wasn't for lack of will, but out of respect for his own body. Still, he doesn't hide that in the early days after saying goodbye, he would have loved to keep playing.